I saw an article come up from Noel Gallagher from 2000. He had an interview that he'd done in Guitar Player in 2000. So this was at a point in Noel's life where Oasis were huge, and I think Liam and Noel were actually kind of hilarious in interviews and stuff. If you can watch kind of compilations of Liam in particular, and I think Nose Beers would be involved quite a lot of the time. What he had said was, no disrespect to Marshalls, but they have one sound and that's just about it, he said at the time. They're either really loud or really quiet, but I found that each Fender amp has its own character. In the past, I would just have a couple of 100-watt Marshalls, a Les Paul, my Epiphone Casino, and that would be it. I wouldn't even try to experiment with guitar sounds because I couldn't be bothered. Is this true? Do Marshalls have only one sound? Well, I don't have a Marshall to try it with, but I do have Helix Native.
This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses.
It should be worth noting as well that Noel said this, I think this was at a stage when he wasn't experimenting with stuff as much, and what we know about Noel now as he's aged a bit and sort of, he definitely seemed on that pedal show to be super interested and super enthusiastic about gear. I think he watches that pedal show in particular, and he talks about, looking at other people's amp settings and kind of copying them. I think this is something that he's grown into, so this opinion that he had back then may not even be true anymore.
I also wanted to say that I did an experiment myself with my own amps that I had at the time. I had a few Mesa Boogies, and I think I had a Marshall style, one of the JCM 800 studio things. I put them all through the same load box and cab, and what I found is that if you put your settings roughly in the same place, there can be quite a lot of similarities. I think there was a Vox AC15 in this test as well, a Mesa Boogie Electrodyne and a Nomad. I'll kind of show you some clips from that. What I've found generally is that I tend to make quite a lot of stuff sound the same, as you will be aware. What I'm looking for oftentimes are like clean tones and very driven tones. And I think really the difference in a lot of ways between how people use certain amps can be why they gravitate towards certain things. So, you know, someone going for a Vox style amplifier might be specifically looking for something that kind of lives in that edge of breakup territory. Someone going for a Fender style amplifier, to my mind, I would presume more often might be going for a cleaner sort of tone, possibly totally clean, you know, if they're going for a Fender Twin or a deluxe reverb, where, you know, up to kind of volume 3 on those is going to stay really clean, versus someone who's gravitating towards a Marshall. Potentially what you're going to be thinking about is like the history of Marshall and whoever your favorite artists are who have used them, and you might specifically be gravitating towards that kind of more goosed 80s Marshall tone or that Gary Moore thing. I think that is more what kind of makes a difference to how we view these amps personally. I don't know if you feel the same, but for sure there are, I think, character differences between the Marshall amps, just as there are with the Fender amps. If anything, I would say that Fender amps, to me, when you take out the element of volume, there is more of a cohesive kind of Fender sound, in my mind, at least. It could be totally wrong. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments, as if there's any experts out there that have a lot of Marshall amplifiers. Is there sort of a one sound element to these amps, do you think, or not so much? I think of Mesa Boogie as well, where in particular I think there is some kind of consistent sound to Mesa Boogie amps throughout the range to some extent, even though they might be totally different circuit designs. So I don't have a bunch of real Marshalls, but I do have, you know, Helix Native, which is, I think, fairly representative of some of the range of what a Marshall might sound like. So, you know, let's just kind of have a look at this. I've actually put together this preset that you heard me using in the introduction, which was this Brit 2203, which is the most recent Marshall model that Line 6 brought into the Helix world. So that is a Marshall that is intact over the years as well, and this is something really important as well with the Marshall circuits. People have clipped bright caps off them and done all sorts of bits and pieces. So I think there is like there's some truth to what Noel is saying, in that I think there is, with a lot of the classic kind of Marshall tones, maybe there is sort of a through line, but I think that's true of most amp manufacturers that actually have any character at all. So I think at the one end of the spectrum, you got like the Brit JTM 45. And this was based on a Fender Bassman, essentially quite a similar circuit. And you can hear that basically this has a fairly fuzzy these amps. I'm pushing the front end with a compressor a little bit, or quite a lot actually, but we can then sort of see the quality of But also, I think, if we take the bright channel, get some of that kind of Marshall kind of clank and jank to it, which yeah, I think it's not quite as tight is the main thing. modern Marshall, and there's not going to be as much gain, although there's still quite a lot. Of course, that would be the volume enough to strip the flesh from your face. And then we get into kind of the plexi stuff, and Brit Trem Bright is one that I really like. And you hear that's kind of got a different quality to it as well, right? That quite a big full sound, even with the gain up full. I think less than that JTM 45. And comparatively a bit darker. So I guess that's one that you might be skipping over in the Marshall catalogue. This is kind of I think it's a 50 watt plexi with a trem circuit. But you can see that's definitely got a more kind of fuzzy, looser tone to it. If we jump these things as well, get even more gain. And some of that kind of looser quality starts to creep out even more. And this is all through the same cab, so I think that's where you're really hearing that things start to sound the same. If you use the same cab on every single thing, basically you get quite a lot of flavours of things sounding very similar. So we get then to plexi realm. And this seems to have even more sag on the front end of the note. So more fuzzy. And then the bright channel, more of that kind of stringy transparentness coming through. So more mids in the normal, less mid. But if you crank them all, you do start to, I think, hear what Noel's talking about, where it's like there is this jankiness to them. But I think the plexi has like a bigger sound than those two that came before, right? Or three even. No, two. So the JTM 45, I think the plexi 50 watt trem had a little bit less gain than the JTM 45, and then kind of the Plexi takes what those does, maybe has even more gain, bit more sagginess to it, bit more of a spongy kind of feel to it. And then we get to the more modern JCM 800 type stuff. And these are then, I think, non-master volume amplifiers. And so it's possible to have more preamp distortion and less power amp, and then this has a bit of a different flavour. So I think you can definitely see through the years, like the Marshall thing, there's some consistency to it, but actually, like, the gain goes up and up and up, and the amps get kind of tighter and more bass. You know, that seems to be the more modern sound. You're adding more gain. You know, the amp is kind of more capable to deal with that gain, and then there's loads more kind of bass and stuff to it. I wanted to show you kind of as well, like even one Marshall amp doesn't have one sound, and particularly the 2203 is quite versatile. And then I switched over, really I'm only changing like 3 parameters here, the drive, the treble and the master. We can change our low and high input, and then if you want to grab this preset that I was using in the intro, I really dig those tones. That's the Marshall 2203 More preset. I'll drop that up into the Gumroad folder. But yeah, there's some tones. So in conclusion for me, I think what you can see is that through the years, the kind of Marshall designs have kind of changed. There is some cohesive element to the sound, I think. And I think you can get kind of similar tones out of each of them. But the point really for me is that Marshall amplifiers are a little bit more versatile than I think we give them credit for. And more or less, if you're looking for certain sounds, you can dial them in on a Marshall amplifier. But if you want really clean tones, you can get some of those. If you want really driven tones, you can get some of those. It's kind of up to you what you do with it. Especially ones with the master volume, right? So I don't know, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Was Noel right, or was he on the old nose beers?